Hey everybody, Luke again, and today we're going to be talking about Breadcrumbs. Now, Breadcrumbs was actually the first song that I wrote for The Perfect Arrow, and if you guys haven't heard our earlier stuff, it's a little bit of a style change. In like our first album, which we weren't even really a band yet, we didn't really know what we wanted, and then the Winter-esque EP and all those songs were all kind of romantic and more positive, I guess. I don't know if that's really the right word because some of the songs were pretty sad too, but definitely not as angry and angsty and dramatic. But I remember distinctly when I wrote that song, I was kind of going through a little bit of a crisis of faith of my own, and at that time, I wrote the song and it came out with this like aggressive and like angsty feel to it, and I knew right then that was what The Perfect Arrow needed to be. That's what it needed to be about. And I remember writing this song and sending it to Luke in a text message and being like, this is what I want next. I want this fiery, this passionate, this angry, this aggressive, this crazy album. That's where we need to go. That's where we go after. That's like the logical next step, I think. And I remember me and him both being super excited about that because we're both kind of feeling it at the same time too. So Breadcrumbs, definitely, it was the first song that we wrote for The Perfect Arrow, and then Church Mouse and Mana followed soon after that. Breadcrumbs, I knew needed to be the first song on the album because of how it kind of paved the way for the album to come to be. And the song itself is really about, it kind of sets the table for like the whole loss of faith concept that kind of is prominent throughout this record. And the song itself is about temptation and kind of having these lusts and these thoughts and these things in your flesh that you can't really necessarily reconcile with the faith that you've been taught to believe, and it's kind of supposed to be represented as like itself being a wider view of human nature rather than just the narrow view of abstinence and legalism and things like that. But for someone who was maybe raised a Christian for their entire life and was taught to accept all these things as truth, and a certain lifestyle being accepted as truth can create like this conflict of spirit, and that kind of thing can be harrowing, can be traumatizing, and it can be hard to deal with and hard to go through. And that's exactly what I was going through when I wrote Breadcrumbs, when I started writing The Perfect Arrow. And the title itself is deliberate. It's a deliberate reference to Hansel and Gretel, the Brothers Grimm fairy tale, where they were being led away into the forest by their stepdad or their dad. I can't really remember, but the tale goes that the family was famished and they didn't have enough food to feed Hansel and Gretel, so what they were going to do is they were going to take the children away into the forest and leave them there to die. So what Hansel and Gretel did to find their way back home was they took a loaf of bread and they would leave breadcrumbs wherever they went, so they'd be able to find their way back home. But when they did so, they found that the breadcrumbs had been eaten by crows, and they wouldn't be able to find their way back home after that. And that's really what the song is about. It's about it kind of like paints this picture of like somebody going through these things and thinking, oh no, it's just a phase. Like I'm gonna come around eventually. Saying like, I hope that road doesn't go too far because, and things like that. But in the end, it's not a phase, and it's not. You don't really go back home after you start to ask yourself these questions and think these thoughts. And the stepping stones reference, if anybody's been kind of following us for a while, would know that reference was also made in one of our older songs called Fossil Creek. And the funny story is actually Breadcrumbs was written before Fossil Creek, um, but we've just kind of loped all these Perfect Arrow songs together, and then we decided we didn't want to do that quite yet, and then we went for Fossil Creek and the Winter SKP and the things like that. But those two songs are supposed to be kind of connected in a way in that one reference. But the Stepping Stones reference in Breadcrumbs, the stepping stones into your heart, are supposed to be referenced to the other songs on the album. The other songs are the stepping stones into your heart. And at the time, there was a girl that I was really into, and I was hoping that by writing these songs and by being my most honest and true self, kind of revealing this window into who I am, that would be something that she would like, that would attract her, which was dumb to begin with, but but it ended up creating something that I'm really proud of, and something that I really believe in, even though I don't really feel that way necessarily anymore. But yeah, so that is Breadcrumbs. And the cool thing about Breadcrumbs also is that I think it's one of the best examples on the album of this kind of fusion genre that we came up with between like folk and alternative rock. And it's kind of one of the, it's a head turner song, I think. We played a show live one time, and that was kind of the first time we played Breadcrumbs, and we opened with it. I remember meeting the drummer or the guitarist from another band, who's actually a very good friend of mine now, after the show, and we had opened with that song, and he told me he was talking to his bandmates, because they played that show too. He was talking to his bandmates like out in the corner, and then we came in with that song, and he told me that he was in the middle of a sentence when we opened up with it, and then he just was forced to stop and turn and look at us, because it has this kind of this really cool, it has like a very traditional folk element to its chord progression, but then also is layered with heavy drums and bass and guitar solos instead of, traditional folk like kick drum and fiddle and things like that. And I think it was a really cool sound that we managed to come up with together. So anyway, that's Breadcrumbs. Tomorrow we're going to do Church Mouse, so thank you guys for watching so much.